Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. A wise man once said that if you're watching this not live, you can skip to the first 10 minutes. And I think it's true, because usually I don't start right away, considering that there's still people joining, and I don't want to make jokes that only 5 people hear. It's rude to the other 95. So usually I do a little bit of a warm up. I know other streamers, they have like fancy, it's starting and you get like the Timcast and people gather around. I don't know how to do that. I'm not that tech literate. I should be though. Maybe I would get more people watching. But if you get more people watching, then you're under scrutiny. Then they try to cancel you. So I kind of like my small comfy streams. To be honest, like when you join a Gargura stream or something like that, and there's tens of thousands of people and the chat is scrolling wild, it's not the same experience like joining a smaller stream. I kind of like keeping it that way. To be honest, unironically, if I could have like thousands upon thousands of people watching, I would probably not like it because then I wouldn't be able to read the chat. Not to mention, like, half of the stream would be you reading the super chats. And I don't know how pleasant that is. I mean, it's pleasant for me because I'm getting the money. But I'm thinking like from the point of the viewer, person on the other side. So yes, that is me, Julie Mora. I am the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Erdogan. When are the elections in Turkey? Do I have a Turk here? Do I have a Turk in the chat? Any Turks in the chat? Probably not yet because it's only 21 people watching. But of course I read you, Slug. But maybe in a bit I will have a Turkish individual. How do you say good morning in Turkey? Maybe Abdi Muhammad can enlighten me. Do they speak the same language? I mean Arabic, right? Is what the Turks speak? Right. Apparently, today, a leftist channel got taken down. The one of Ash Sarkar got taken down. And I said, give it an hour. Give it an hour because they have connections, they have money, they have wealth, they have power. And within an hour, the channel was restored. But a lot of people were mocking. It's like, oh, you were asking for censorship and now you got censored. Ah, ha, ha. Story as all this time. Leftist channel gets taken down. People are like, ah, ha, ha, now finally it come to you, and then they come back. What I think is happening, it can be two things. Either there's an employee at YouTube who's unaware of the politics. Like, they just have a list of things that they need to ban. If they see it, they ban it. And they ban the channel, and then the channel whines and complains, it goes up the chain, and it comes back. So that is one of the things. The other one is that it's a bot, an AI. The only difference is that mortals such as ourselves, if we get banned, we don't come back. We're not like Jesus. We're not like Ash Sarkar. Turks speak Turkish and German. Why would the Turks speak German? I don't believe that. Give me a second so I can put the cat in jail. Every single goddamn time. No. Go to jail. No, you go to jail. You go to jail, cat. Go to jail. Stay in jail. Every single time I'm streaming, the cat comes at the door and meow, meow, meow. It's because it hears me talk and it becomes jealous because I'm talking to you and I'm not playing with the cat. Yeah, seriously, every single time, no exception. The cat knows. Horrible. Okay. Let's look at some interesting news segments. So, this is an interesting one. I like the phrasing of it. It's absolutely beautiful. Give me a second. You'll love it as well when you see it. Young people are choosing. I love this. They're choosing to live in pods instead of apartments. It's a choice, right? I mean, young people, they have the opportunity to live in a 4-room apartment or in a pod, and they're like, I will live in the pod. Now, I'm not saying there aren't such individuals. By all means, they probably are. But how many of them are there that have the opportunity to make this choice? In my humble opinion, is that they have to live in the pods because they don't have money. And they have crippling student debt. That's why they live in the pod. It's not that they choose to live in the pod. By the way, so I actually looked at the statistics 20 years ago in the European Union. Among all member states, around 90% of the people own the house. Can you wrap your brain around that? Like 90% of people of all European states own the house. Now, of course, it depends what do you mean by house. Because I just want to make absolutely clear that this is also a house. Right? So this is a house. But someone owned it. Obviously, you know, like not all houses looks like this, but when you say 90% of the people, it includes the people that lived here. Now, I don't know how many of them are that actually have houses like this. This is an exception even in Romania, all right? Like, this is the very, very poor housing type, but like usually, I mean, this is an extreme, right? It's like showing a mansion, like a palace. It's on the other extreme. But what I want to point out that in the past, 90% of every single member state of the European Union had 90% of people with houses 20 years ago. Now, there are places where you have like 60% or even less. Romania is still one of the nations that has 90% of people owning houses. So the question is, like, what happened? What exactly happened during these 20 years? Because, like, the population is dropping. So there should be cheaper houses. Because now there's a lot of empty houses, right? Like, if you have a family that has 2 houses and only 1 kid, well, there's an extra house on the market, right? So the question would be, why isn't the rent going down? And why isn't the housing market also going down? And we'll leave that for people to figure it out. How dare you look down on a house owner? Well, I mean, it's better than a pod. I don't know. All right, no, hold on. It's not that you're looking at it down at a house owner, right? This is unlivable. Like, let's be honest. It's going to collapse on the person inside. It's a health hazard. I mean, this is sad. I guess it's better than being homeless to a degree, but no. No, I absolutely not. I would not consider this to be a nice place to live. I mean, this is better, right? So you can upgrade. But yeah, you got villages where you have people like this. Now, the reason this looks like this, I just want to explain it to people. During communism, you had villages which maybe had like communal farming organized by the state, and they were forcefully relocated into that area. And once the communal farming was gone, once the socialism left, you now have abject poverty because like there's no way people can make money. Or you can have a factory in the heart of a city which now went bankrupt. So without the factory, there's massive poverty. So this is why you get this type of thing. But again, this is the extreme, right? Like, it's not something that even the most amount of people happen to live under these conditions. Like, it's even by Romanian standard, that is extremely poor. The commie blocks, they're... By the way, I heard about a great invention that communists made. It's called micro-concrete. Let me write it in the chat. So it's called micro-concrete. Micro-concrete is like this. 1 layer of concrete, 1 layer of microphones. 1 layer of concrete, 1 layer of microphones. Micro-concrete. It's how the buildings used to be built. Regarding the communist tenants, they're very cheap. I think I have a video where I showed them. But, I mean, they look like this. Let me... So they're quite livable if you're a small family. Like, if you're a family of, I don't know, let's say, like, it's already pushing it to the edge if you're 2 people with a kid. Because it's very small, right? But if you happen to live with a grandparent or you have 3 or 4 kids, then it becomes bad. But still, it's a lot better than living in a pod. Notice how, like, every single room looks the same, right? Because, like, that's how it was under communism. And some people, like, even the furniture used to be the same. Now, this is renovated. It's brought back to the current era. But back then, like, you would go into another person's house. It was literally the same house. It was just that the furniture was arranged differently. No, I don't talk to Goodfella anymore. My God, like, I haven't spoke with him in a while. Not because I'm upset or we're not friends or anything like that. It's just that we never happened to talk anymore. It's just, it never came up. But anyway, right, so let's talk about this. You know, this is the thing that I hate the most about it is the title. It's like young people are choosing. No, young people are constrained to do this. They're not choosing shit. Now, apparently, young people have chosen to rent co-working spaces and take ride shares instead of buying cars. Another dumb take. Although, with the cars, I'm willing to give a little bit of a wiggle room. Because when I was in the city, I also didn't want to buy a car. Because I was like, I don't really travel that much. I'm not a big fan of driving. But now that I moved a little bit away, I would have probably loved to have a car. But I need to get a driving license. And even if I do get the driving license, it would still be an expense. But I think I can afford the second-hand car. Still, I can get, like, especially if you're in a big city, I noticed that in some situations, it's actually more faster than if you walk or take the subway than if you have a car. I mean, especially in Romania, London, I think. You might include Spain here. There are some cities where the traffic is so bad that if you really want to, like, get a motorcycle or a bicycle, take the subway or walk. But even then, like, people love having cars. It's a status thing. It's how you get women in high school. I actually did talk about this. It's like women are contributing to global warming because they choose men with cars when they're in high school. So it's a status thing. But anyway, right. Through a service called Podshare, young people are giving up the comfort of private home for a bunk bed with a shared kitchen and bathroom facilities. I gotta say, when I got my first apartment, I wasn't really an apartment. It was like a 1-room flat. I was extremely happy with it. But I was happy with it because I lived alone. I had no girlfriend at the time. I didn't feel the need to party or anything like that. So it was awesome to, quote unquote, escape my parents. Because then I could do whatever I wanted. I could cook whatever I want. I could eat whatever I want. If I didn't want to eat one day, I didn't eat. If I wanted to stay up late, I could stay up late. So it was really cool because I got away from all the rules. And all of the things. It's like, as long as you live under my roof, you live under my rules bullshit, right? So I can see the appeal if you're a teenager to live in a pod. But it should be a transitory period. Like, you're supposed to eventually at least get a house so you can have a family. That's the normal way. I mean, in Romania at least. But I understand that in other places like the US or in places like even London, people are now living on rent. Like, do you know how weird it is in Romania for someone not to have a house? Even if it's a bad house, they still have a house. Like, most people just can't even conceive the idea of living on rent. It's like, okay, so you have an apartment that's not yours, so you can't even buy the furniture you like, and at any point, something can happen, and the owner can kick you out, and then you have to struggle finding another place. Man, it's horrible, right? Now, I understand there are people who have no situation but to be like that, but society should desire to get people to have a house. And I obviously know why that is, like, especially in places like London. I mean, you got places like Australia where they allow Chinese people to buy housing. Like in Romania, it's illegal for someone that's not Romanian to buy a house in Romania. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would you do that? Because what they do is they flip the housing market. Like, flipping houses should be illegal. I'm a little bit leftist. I'm more on the center. So I don't agree with the idea. It's like, if you buy a house, either rent it or sell it. Don't keep it for like 5 years empty so you can flip it. Like, housing should be a little bit different. Should be have like a different regime than other things. And there are countries where it's actually regulated, that you can't just have a house and hold it for 10 years hoping that the prices will go up and then you sell it and you make money. It's like, it shouldn't be like the stock market. Do you honestly expect young people to get a house these days? At best, they live at rent. At worst, they live in these wage dens. No, in Romania, 90% of people have a house, Tactical Droid. Like, when I went to the bank to make my loan, I actually asked, like, what do people make loans for the most? And the answer was housing. A lot of people do that. They take a loan for a house, and then they try to pay it faster than the down payment is due. I mean, for example, in Romania, one-room flat in a big city costs around $30,000. A house like mine costs $90,000. So the pricing of the houses are very cheap. The wages are lower, but you can make a loan. So if you happen to have a wife and, you know, she's got like a medium job, like a medium wage, and you have a medium wage, together you can have enough money to buy a house. You get married, you have people coming, bringing wedding gifts, which are usually pecuniary in nature. And then with that money, you put the down payment, and congratulations, you just have an apartment. Yeah, young people, you get married, you get a lot of wedding prices, wedding gifts. So when you go to a wedding, you're supposed to give them some cash. And with the money from the wedding, they put a down payment on a house. Yes, young people. And look, this motherfucker, look, I don't get it. Like Tactical Droid, every single time he's contrarian, and then he realizes that I'm right. I'm saying every young person in Romania has an easy time getting a house. And he goes like, oh, do you think that the young people can have houses? And now he's like, I mean, I'm 21 and I have a house. Yes, motherfucker, you're 21 and you have a house. Literally what I'm saying. In Romania, it's the country with the highest number of homeowners in the entire European Union. Whatever happened to acid rain and holes in the ozone layer? Oh, don't bring back the 80s. They want their propaganda back. This doesn't work in a nation that has hyperinflation. Man, this doesn't work in a nation where you allow foreigners to flip houses, like buy them and keep them empty so they can flip them later, and you allow for mass immigration. Yes, it doesn't work if you have these two things. Because if you have mass immigration and everyone is trying to find rent, you have an influx of people overnight, and they're all trying to find rent, then a person that has an extra house is going to realize it's a lot more advantageous if he just rents it rather than sells it. That's the main problem. That's why the European Union is fucked up. Because 20 years ago, you didn't have these issues. I still am a nice guy, horrible gamer. Acid snow. That's a good point. Why isn't there acid snow? Yeah, acid rain used to scare me as well. I was thinking it's like you go out and then the acid rain comes and it hurts you. Like it gives you blisters on the skin. I was like, what the hell? All right. All of this is unimaginable for me. I'm from Hong Kong. Well, like what is unimaginable? Like people having houses or not having houses? Here's the thing though, I am renting the house to pay the bank for the loan. A lot of Romanians do this. They manage to get some money on the side, they put a down payment on the bank, they buy a house, and then they rent the house. And they use the rent to pay the loan. Like, this is one of the most common tactics in Romania. Honestly. Anyway, right. Let's go back to Turkey. Is there any Turk in the chat? Do I have a Turk? Press 1 if you're a Turk. Any Turks? I don't have Turks. I ran out of Turks. No Turks. Not a single Turk. Okay, fine. You know. I thought I filled with Turks. Apparently not. Abdi Mohammed, can you pretend to be a Turk? Can you do me the favor? 0 Turks, yes. I noticed that. Sad. What do Turks... Oh, I got a Turk. Holy shit, I got a Turk. What currency do Turks have? What is the Turkish currency? Do they don't have dollars, do they? They have something else. All right. So here's the thing. The European Court of Human Rights is asking Turkey to modify the law which claims that if you insult the president, if you insult the sultan, you end up to jail. Straight to jail. Apparently 13,000 people have been imprisoned for making fun of the sultan. There's also a funny story where a comedian in Germany insulted the sultan, said he's got a little tail, quote unquote tail, right? In other words, he's got a small penis. That's what the comedian said. And the Turkish ambassador asked Merkel to punish the guy. Now, I'm a little well versed in the history of the Ottoman Empire, and for more than 100 years, actual sultans, they didn't consider it a crime if you insulted them. Believe it or not, like, there was actually more free speech in the Ottoman Empire than you had in other European countries. I mean, you could get sued as a civil lawsuit, you know, if you slandered or used libel, but that's like in every other country. But no, like, in the Ottoman Empire, especially towards the end, you could have just said whatever you wanted about the Sultan, and you wouldn't go to prison. But the current Sultan apparently has put 13,000 people in prison. So, first of all, I find it hilarious that the European Court of Human Rights thinks they have anything to say in the matter. Like, number one, Turkey is not in the EU, okay? Number two, the European Union is the bitch boy of Turkey. Like, after what happened 2 years ago, where Erdogan used refugees as a bioweapon against the European Union, like, it was the most interesting thing I have ever seen. Like, the most cynical thing. So, if you don't know, the European Union was paying Turkey to keep the refugees in Turkey. Now, there was a conflict with Greece, and what Turkey did was it just opened the gates, it threw the refugees out of Turkey, locked the gates behind them, pointed weapons at them, and told them, like, go to the Greek border. So now you had human beings that were trapped between the no man's land between Turkey and Greece. Right? So if they wanted to go back to Turkey, they were threatened that they would get shot. And if they wanted to go to Greece, well, they would meet the bastons of the people defending the border. It was very interesting, right? It's very cynical, right? Because, like, oh, the European Union loves refugees, does it? It's like, all right. So this is the type of person Erdogan is. And I think, like, if the European Union pisses him off, he's going to do that again. Because he can. I mean, the Turkish prisons are overflowing. They can always just get rid of some inmates using this tactic. But I find it interesting because, like, in the UK, there were people arrested for calling Anne Soubry a Nazi. So it's not like you have free speech in the EU. Like, there are a certain politicians, especially in Germany. Like, there was a guy who made fun of a politician. I think he was from, not from the CDU, he was from the Socialist Party. And he had the cops raid his home. So, like, don't give me this bullshit. I mean, of course, like in the EU, you don't have 13,000 people arrested. Like, this is a little bit too much. But I'm surprised that the European Court of Human Rights doesn't talk about what happened in Germany or what happened in the UK. And what happens in a lot of places where you have people just making a joke on Twitter and boom, you have the masked ones. This is how we call the masked ones, barging into a person's house. Erdogan cocked out on the Uyghurs, his China's bitch. Oh yeah, like initially but like that's another topic. Cynical but effective. I love that. It's like vote Erdogan. Cynical but effective. You know that European Court of Human Rights is different and not in the EU, right? Literally, Count Dankula made clear in the case. Is it not in the EU? But even if it's not in the EU, from what I know, the laws from CEDAW are being applied to the member states. So you can actually, like, for example, if I sued the state that it took some land of mine during communism times and now I want it back. If I lose the lawsuit in Romania, so I go to the highest court of Romanian order and I asked and they don't give what I want, then I can go to the European Court of Human Rights. And if I win the lawsuit there, then it's considered retroactively being enforced in my country. So I'm not really sure if it's in the EU or not. I mean, maybe you're right. I haven't looked into it, but I know for sure that it's an international thing that the European Union has signed on, and its decisions are enforceable, at least in my country, and I'm pretty sure in Germany as well. But where is Tefik? Okay, the Turkish lira. Yes. So this is what I wanted to Turk. This is why I wanted Tefik here, because I got a couple of personal observations, and I want to see if Tefik agrees with me or not. I understand that the Sultan is running out of popularity, and believe it or not, despite the fact that the European press is saying that the elections are rigged in Turkey, I don't think so. I literally think that the Turks actually want a daddy. There are some nations in the world who don't want democracy. I know this is hard to believe, but it's true. Like, there are people out there in the world that, if given the chance to vote, they want to vote for an authoritarian figure. Like, if you give them democracy and you put them like, okay, can you vote for something? Yes. We want Sharia. We want a person that's having a lot of power. We want the president to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So I genuinely think that the elections in Turkey are fair. At least by the account that they keep saying, oh, Erdogan is winning, so therefore the elections are rigged. I don't think that's the case. I literally think that Turkey is an example of a country where they do want the daddy. Now, with that said, he's actually losing in popularity. And a lot of people are actually pissed off about this law. Again, 13,000 Turks are being convicted because they made fun of Erdogan. So I want to know if Tefik agrees with me, if he resonates with me or not. Russia and Turkey, as well as many non-EU countries, are members. It's why it's more respected than the Court of Justice of the European Union. Okay, now I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know, but it is making more sense now why the European Court of Human Rights frowns at Turkey. So let's see if Tefik agrees with me. $13,000 jerks? Huh. I don't know, like, from what I see, okay, this is what the person running against Erdogan can do. If I was organizing his campaign, I would look at these 13,000 cases, and I would pick 800 cases that makes people have a tear coming out of their cock. Like some of the most, touching cases, some of the most emotional, like some that they posted something very funny and they were, the reaction of the state was an overreaction. I think you can easily filter out like 900 of them. Maybe like someone that is a father and he had 2 children in his care and he just posted something funny on social media and the state went into his house and dragged him away and blah, blah, blah. And then you release one of them per day for the next 3 months before the election. And also focus about how poorly they were treated in prison and how horrible. And if you do that, I think you can get quite a big chunk of votes. I think you might get like a couple of big percentages that will make the difference. Because again, like right now, the trending is going against him. So what do you think, Tifik? You live there. Trump would be a banger in Turkey. Turks don't want a daddy, but more like a tribal leader. How the fuck is that different? Like when I say a daddy, I mean someone that is more like Putin. Like they make decisions and they don't really get a lot of opposition on the decisions that they make. So like more an authoritarian figure. I would crawl a kilometer over broken glass to hear V fart in a walkie-talkie, but I'm a dog and my opinions aren't worth much, says Lucifer the Doberman. Only a person from California, yeah, would say something like that. You think they would be allowed? It's not as bad as in Russia. I mean, it's not to the point where if you talk against Erdogan during the election period, you get arrested, especially if the opinion polling is going away from Erdogan. Like, the opinion polling is very important. Even in Russia, believe it or not, Putin is favorable in the opinion polls. Like, he's got his own base. He's got his supporters. Even with dictators, you still need to have a percentage of the peasantry on your side. It's the same if you look at the kings during monarchy and the medieval time. Like the king, he would always, like no matter how tyrannical he was, he always had a group of peasants that were on his side and a group of nobles. A daddy controls, a tribal leader gives orders, like how army is not the same as a slave-master relationship. Well, I guess we're just stuck at difference of semantics. Well, when I say a daddy, I mean a strong man, as the Americans like to say. Literally all rulers rule at the consent of the governed. I mean, yes and no. There are some exceptions, like Maduro, for example. But you do have a couple of people in history that were such brutal tyrants that even though like people hated them, they followed out of fear. So yes, it's the consent of the governed, but the consent can be willingly given or it can be terrorized into people. Like a ruler that's so tyrannical that people are afraid to rise up against him. I mean, think about it. You know, you can have a population that's invaded by a foreign nation. And, I mean, obviously they don't like the new situation. Obviously they don't like the new ruler. But, like, what can they do? I mean, they don't have any power. They lost the war. So, they're just going to do what they're told. Alright. Let's look at some other news. So this is interesting. Like, the reason I made this is that I think that the opposition of Erdogan might have a chance of winning. Like, we might actually see the next election Erdogan losing his seat. So it's going to be interesting. This is my prediction. This is something that I found which is funny. So this actually went viral on the internet. A little girl just came up to the ice cream truck and asked if she could buy ice cream with a blue rock. I am now one blue rock richer. This is so wholesome, isn't it? This is so wholesome, very wholesome, yes. Now give the government half of the fucking rock. Honestly, the IRS should patrol this guy. He got the rock and didn't give Uncle Sam the fair share. You know what I think? Both him and the little girl are guilty. First of all, the little girl, when she picked up the rock, she had to give some to the government. It's pretty much like when it's the income tax, right? Like she picked up the rock, she got the income, she had to cut away some of it, depending in what state she is, more or less, and give it to the government. Now this guy also has to give a percentage of the rock to the government for the income, another percentage for the sales tax, because there was a monetary transaction which took place. He's gotta take another percentage of the rock if he wants to give it to someone else. And also the carbon tax. Let's not forget the carbon tax. I don't know if carbon was used to make this rock, so if I don't know, let's err on the side of caution and say yes. So he also has to pay the carbon tax, the green tax. And if he doesn't, he needs to go to jail. Straight to jail. Is that an opal? That would be funny if it's actually valuable. Yes, does the little girl have a mining license? Yes, the license is... Well, you know, I give you this. It takes place in the US, so it's not in the UK. Which means that you don't need that many licenses. But if it was in the UK, yes, like the little girl would have had to show license for being able to pick the rock. I was always against the income tax and the corporate tax. I think like in society you should just have sales tax and that's it. And believe it or not, the United States actually operated like that for a long while. As far as I know, like please anyone tell me, before World War II, wasn't the US operating just on sales tax? And you also had the idea of buying war bonds. So you could technically buy war bonds, which meant that you're supporting the economy voluntarily. That goes in your soy face collection. Oh, come on. That was just wholesome. Opals diminish over time. Why do people know these things? Yeah, the income tax was a temporary war power thing. You know, like many things that are temporary. Well, when the things that last forever are things that the government makes as temporary measures. You know it's going to last forever, like 2 weeks to flatten the curve or whatever. The Civil War invented the income tax. Okay, so I knew it was a war effort thing. But it was supposed to be temporary and then it remained forever. Now you got so many taxes, it's unfunny, and I don't think you're ever going to get rid of them. But if you think about it, back then, at least when I learned things in school about the medieval time, the peasants were oppressed because they had to toil the land and give a lot of their taxes to the nobles. And I looked at it, so okay, the peasant would have a land, and 15% of what he made had to go to the noble, and then 10% of what he made had to go to the church. So the peasant was paying, I guess, like a 25% tax, you would say. But then, if you look at today, you got the income tax, you get money, you pay a tax. You buy something, you pay a tax. If you buy a house, you pay a tax for buying, and then you also pay property tax for it. If you get an inheritance, you pay a tax, and then you have taxes for sugar, alcohol, tobacco, gas. Everything you buy costs gas, and the price of the tax gets to be felt in your pocket. I mean, the government is taxing you just for breathing at this point. Like, not any transaction that you make, anything that you do is taxed. And, you know, like they say, oh, well, hold on a little bit, right? Because we got a progressive tax, so the poor people pay less. Yeah, technically, but if you look at it, let's say you have a supermarket, right? Now, the supermarket is considered to be in the upper category, so it pays a lot of taxes. And when you tax the supermarket, the prices go up because obviously they can take money away from the consumer. They don't want to take money away from themselves, which is why if you go in Romania, you will see that things at a supermarket have different prices than what you see in Germany. One of the reasons for that is the different level of taxation. So the sales tax, the environmental tax, like all of these, the gas tax, all of these add up. And then the supermarket can raise the prices just because they have to pay more taxes. That guy had the funny soy face, but if he paid the taxes for the ice cream, he gave the ice cream as a good gesture. Very handsome. You know what? He actually did pay the taxes for the ice cream. Fuck my life. That's true. Like, he gave the ice cream for free to the little girl, and he still had to pay taxes for it. If you think the government is brutal and unjust, just imagine how it was like 1,000 years ago. Well, I don't know, like 1,000 years ago, they didn't have the technology to fuck with you the level they do today. You know, but I guess it was bad from different perspectives. There were many people that actually hid what they were making so that they don't pay taxes. But even back then, yes, like people were very pissed off with taxes. A lot of people point out to the story of Robin Hood. Like he robbed from the rich and gave to the poor. Motherfucker, Robin Hood was robbing from the state. Like Robin Hood was robbing from the government. The tax collector was the one that Robin Hood was robbing from. So he was taking away from the tax collector and giving back to the people. All the taxes get passed down to the consumer. Absolutely. I pay 54% of my money to the government, says Abdi Muhammad. A medieval peasant paid less tribute and tithe than I pay in taxes. Yes, exactly. I guess the only difference with the medieval peasant is that he had to go to war. So technically, like, the government could say, and by the way, like, some wars were utterly retarded. Like, you had wars over a diplomat getting insulted, over some king's honor being slighted. You know, like some wars, yeah, sure, like there were defensive wars. It's like, oh my god, the Vikings are coming, right? We need to do something about it. So you had wars that made sense, but then you had wars that made absolutely no sense. It was just like the ego of the diplomat or the ego of the king or whatever. And then you had to go to war and you could die. So that was like the only negative side of that time period. But overall, you probably paid less taxes then than you do now. The government can still just conscript you. You still might have to go to war. That is correct, but like it doesn't happen now, right? So we live in the time that's called the Great Peace. And yes, like technically it can conscript you, but I highly doubt you're going to see conscription in the US. Or you're going to see conscription in Sweden. Although, I mean, yeah, sure, it can happen. Yeah, I'm going to put tax on the rich. That will show them. And then all the goods in the supermarkets go brrrr on the price tag. Did you see the United States Democrats are working on the wealth tax right now to include in the budget bill? Build back better, my placid ass. Yeah, I mean, this is why I'm not happy when the rich are getting taxed more. Because the rich, they already have their money in places that the government can't really reach. But not only that, you tax the supermarkets, right? Or you tax the places that actually produce goods. And then, yeah, sure, the people on that are poor aren't getting taxed. However, they're going to pay more for the basic goods and the basic necessities. So, all in all, they're still paying more. Sweden does have conscription. It's called military service. Yeah, but I don't think you're going to go to war, is what I'm saying. I don't think like Sweden is going to mobilize all of the reserves anytime soon. Most wars nowadays are fought by professional soldiers. I mean, imagine you're a country and you have, I don't know, 1 million of soldiers, right? and you get that million soldiers to defend the dam. And then you just have like a hypersonic missile just flying from the platform of an enemy state into the dam. Like, what did the soldiers manage to accomplish? It's not about numbers, it's more about technology. In Sweden, nobles and kings could forcefully lodge and eat in your house on your expense until it was banned. Yeah. So actually, that makes a lot of sense. It wasn't just Sweden, it was everywhere. So a lot of people think that the king would sit in his palace. No, that's not the case, because in a medieval society, you only had access to the resources around you. I mean, you didn't have refrigerating units, you didn't have anything like that. So the king would sit in the palace, and eventually the farmers around him would run out of sheep, they would run out of cows, right? They wouldn't. The forest would start to run out of game. And then the king would start moving around the countryside, and he would basically go to visit, quote unquote, other nobles. He would never go into a peasant's house, obviously. But it was considered a great honor to receive a visit from the king. The problem is it wasn't as honorable as the historians make it out to be, because a lot of families, on the surface, they had to act overjoyed that they're getting a visit from the king. But in reality, they were very upset about it, because you have the king and his entire entourage, and he's sitting there for 1 week. So you have to, just get all the best meals and all the good feasts. And you have to spend a lot of money on musicians and shit. So, I mean, it happened very often. And a lot of the time, the people that would receive the honor were very upset about it. I mean, it could literally just put an entire house into bankruptcy for a while if you got a visit from the king. Now, here's another interesting take. In reality, they were upset about it, and you know that for sure. Yeah, man, if I came to your house and I started eating as much as possible, like, imagine if I came to your house and you had to make a dinner for 20 people for a month, a day. Like, every day you have to feed 20 people for the next month. And you're on edge because if you insult me, you can lose my favor and whatnot. Yeah, it was a very dramatic chore for a lot of people to do that. But anyway, right. What was I saying? So back in the day, traveling wasn't really popular unless you went to the military. So you had to travel all the way until you reached the recruitment. Or you traveled on a religious pilgrimage. So the idea of the tavern, like you have in medieval games, didn't really exist. What you did have were indeed like taverns, but they were very rare, and there was no drinking there. You could eat, and when you slept, you didn't really get a room. What you got was a place on a bed that 5 or 6 other people shared. So you'd get in a bed, and they would have like all these people, and they would talk to each other usually. And they would exchange information, because again, there were no newspapers back then. And they would talk about how things are in their village and how things are in your village. And that was pretty much like the gossip that went. But what's interesting is that, as I mentioned before, like taverns were very rare. What people did is that they would actually seek shelter in someone else's home. So a peasant would try to go to another village, and they would ask other peasants if they can come in for the night. Nobles would go to other nobles, and kings would go to some of the most wealthy nobles. Obviously, like never, I don't think it was ever the case that a king would go to a peasant's house. But where am I going with this? There were some people that were not welcome. And those people that weren't welcome were people that were sick. So if you were coughing, sneezing, if you had the pox, if you had any of these issues, no one would have you. So what ends up happening is that the church creates these places called hospice, where all the sick would gather. So if you're a person that was on a religious pilgrimage and no one would have you, you could go to a hospital and you could sleep there for the night. And they would have a couple of nuns that would take care of you. You know, they would give you soup or something. And that's how hospitals were being made. It's pretty much like people who were sick had no one to receive them, and they had this place called a hospital where they would rest for the night. No, you need to give a super chat, Treetop Ghost. No, you don't need to bow down to the wrenches. But if you want a wrench, you give a super chat. They didn't have vaccine mandates. Lepers were different, okay? So lepers, they weren't allowed anywhere. Like, they had colonies. So if you're a leper, you had a leper colony. And you had to go there, and usually you would have a couple of people, like, bringing food close to the leper colony, and you would take the food, and like the lepers would take the food and bring it there. But lepers, yeah, like, if they were found outside of a leper colony, people would come out with spears and tell them to fuck off. Like, it was actually a crime to leave the leper colony. Hospice is where you go to die from cancer nowadays. I'm not a king, says Tactical Droid. Okay, so if the Romanian president comes into your house and, you know, he does this with so many people that he probably forgets your name anyway, and you have to have a feast for him every single day for the next month, you think you'd be happy about it. It doesn't work like that, Abdi. Doesn't work with nepotism. Why are you pulling the strings, Abdi? Why are you abusing your power? Okay, fine. You know what? I fall to peer pressure. I'm going to fall to peer pressure and I'll give him a wrench. In the honor of the Abdi Muhammad and Crafty Hurgakok. You need to thank them. You need to thank them after the stream. I see, Tactical Droid. So if it's a king you like, well, I'm pretty sure, you know, like some nobles that happen to like the king would be thrilled about it. But most nobles probably didn't give a shit and wanted him to go away. You don't understand. We're talking about the medieval ages, alright? Like, nobles couldn't order food from Amazon. They didn't have a Walmart. If the king came to your place and ate all the fucking food, then you have the peasants that are starving. You have the peasants that can be rioting and rise up against you. You now have problems because there is food shortage. Alright? Like, when the king comes to you, your stocks are showing exactly the same way under communism. Like, empty shelves everywhere. Empty warehouses wherever you go. I would try to make myself stand up aside from other peasants. What do you mean? By the way, wasn't Suleiman from the Ottoman Empire that would often disguise himself as a peasant? A lot of leaders did that, by the way. They would I'm starting to think they must be bored to extreme degrees if you're a ruler in medieval society, right? You don't have internet. You don't have anything, so when it's peacetime, you're probably bored out of your mind. So a lot of them actually disguise themselves as peasants in order to see how life is in their country. And they would travel secretly to various places with, obviously, like their royal guard that were also disguised. And they would try to see how people talk about them, what laws are being made, if they're being respected. Vlad the Impaler used to do that. I think Suleiman used to do that. It's actually quite common. And by the way, like, here's a funny story about Vlad the Impaler. He spoke Turkish, so there was an event where his army got almost decimated by the Ottomans, and he managed to dress as a Turkish soldier. And because he spoke perfect Turkish, they allowed him to go. Like, they thought he's an actual Turkish soldier. So back then, Another advantage was that there was no television, so most people didn't actually know how the leader looked like. Like, they didn't know how his face looked like. It's actually quite interesting. Think about it. Like, you would not have any idea how your king looks like. There's no newspapers, there's no television, there's no radio. Like, you just... I guess, like, one day, you might hear people creating a ruckus, and it's like, what's happening? Oh, it's the royal entourage. It's like, what is it doing? It's coming in our city. Oh my god, you know, and people go on the streets to actually see it. Hillary sometimes does it. Some Somali kings did that to make sure people were treating the poor with respect. Yeah, Abdi, exactly. Like that's what our rulers did. It was usually to see if the peasants are being taken care of. Like, and by the way, you could actually talk to him, like, as a peasant, when he was out, you know, with the royal guards and whatnot, and he was patrolling the cities. You could talk to him. Like, you could actually... There are so many cases where you have a peasant going up to the king, and he would talk with him. Because the entire purpose of the road trip was to raise his popularity among the peasantry. It's so interesting to read up on medieval history. Didn't Vlad fear that he might get replaced easily? Yeah, I mean, a lot of kings and rulers did. Which is why he wanted to have the peasants on his side. Oh my god, Gabriel is a genius. Yes, the face is minted on the coins. But it depends, right? Because if you look at Romania, when you had kings having very short reigns, because the Romanian CIA at the time, like the Secret Service, the deep state of medieval time, and yes, medieval times did have deep states as well, they would often plot and they would try to get weak kings on the throne so that the nobles had all the power. And in that situation, they wouldn't mint the coins. I mean, you didn't just mint new coins just because a new guy is there. So, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about like an emperor, like a Roman emperor, then you could have like coins minted with his image, kings in France, kings in the UK. But if you're looking at a smaller nation state where you constantly fluctuate with new rulers, you probably wouldn't even get a coin with their face on. And even then, it wasn't as artistic and, you know, like a good depiction as you would have like a normal image of the person. Let me actually look at some old coins, because I think in Romania they just had like a coin with the emblem. Right. So look at these coins. Like, do you see any ruler? Now, some of them, again, they would have this, but when you see this, like if you have this coin, can you recognize the person on the street? Or you have this? I mean, I guess, you know, like, if you have this, like, can you recognize the guy? What if he has a different hairstyle? Now, the reason people would know that he's a king is, like, A, because the way he dressed. B, he was more groomed than everyone. I mean, by looking at him, you would probably know he's a noble unless he's under disguise. But usually it was the entourage, right? Like, it's the entourage, the royal colors, all of that. But most coins, at least here in Eastern Europe, they didn't have the face of the guy. And when they did have the face of the guy, yeah, good luck knowing who the man is. Because it's not a Photoshop. And if he changes his hairstyle, then you're completely out of luck. The founder of modern Sweden, Gustav Vasa, staged a revolt against Denmark and would hide in haystacks and stuff like that while gathering supporters. Yeah, I totally believe that. That's very common to what happened in a lot of countries. Oh, yeah. Imagine if he actually got fatter. Imagine if he's got like his face on a coin and then he gets fat. 100% the king is fatter than shown on the coin. We have no historical accounts of that, but I suppose, yeah, I mean, the king was definitely fatter than everyone else in the country. Like, think about it. The king gets to eat as best as humanly possible. There is no way that he probably didn't change, like he wouldn't get fatter or something like that. The people would know who it was. Yeah, they would know who it was because of A, his royal entourage, and B, the fact that other people would tell you he is the king. But you wouldn't know his face. Like, if you go to a peasant and you ask him to draw the figure of the king or to describe the king, chances are, if he wasn't from the capital and he actually didn't see the king in his life, he might not know. The citation for the silver coin was about how well the Dacians would forge the Roman coin. China and some Asian countries did the whole exclusive color thing. I think like there was a couple of places where you could see statues of him. So ancient Greece, Roman Empire, there were statues of kings and busts of kings. So if you lived in the capital, you had a better idea on how the person looks like. Especially if he had some events, like he would go to a coliseum or something. But again, if we're talking about a peasant that lives in a backwater village, he would have literally no clue. There's no way he would know. The king's visit was also used to take the hosting noble down a notch by draining coffers. Can't overthrow a king with no cash. I'm trying to explain that to Tactical Droid, but he doesn't believe me. I don't have a Discord community. I used to have one, and then Discord told me that it's hate speech. Now, we're talking about pages upon pages of years of text, and there was some hate speech there. So they told me that if I don't remove the hate speech, they're going to shut down my server. So I told them to go fuck themselves, and I deleted my server anyway, because I'm not their bitch boy. If they want me to delete the hate speech, they should pay me. I'm not doing their work for free. It's their responsibility to remove what they consider hate speech. I don't consider anything hate speech. Such a fucking dumb concept. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, hate speech. Fucking hate speech. What is jealousy speech? What is happiness speech? What the fuck hate speech? Take that communist shit and shove it up your ass. Yeah, I abandoned Gilded because people didn't really use it as much, and I was like, ah, fuck it. No, but seriously, like, man, like, the concept of hate speech is the most ridiculous concept, and it can mean literally anything. Apparently, misgendering someone is now hate speech. Saying Islam is questionable. There was a guy who wrote that on his house, and that was hate speech. Well, it's not, you know, because, like, they will say, oh, it's speech that threatens to do violence. No, that's actually threats, and it's regulated by the law. If you threaten someone in real life, it's not free speech. Even the American Supreme Court doesn't consider that free speech. I'm not making it up. Yeah, hate crimes are other dumb shits. Like, I don't know if hate crimes actually lowered racial aggravated crimes or not. But basically, like, if you punch someone in the face, it doesn't really matter the reason. It's a crime. You should go to jail. If the government doesn't like it, it's hate speech. Yeah, well, I don't know. It's such a silly concept. Oh. People don't often commit crimes inspired by love. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, there is actually a thing in the Romanian code. It's called crimes out of passion. I mean, do you know how often that happens? So, for example, you come home and you see someone boogering your wife. I mean, that's like what you're going to do next is called a crime out of passion. You don't commit crimes against someone you love. No, you commit crimes against someone that is fucking with the person you love. Whenever the king would visit the noble was socially expected to provide a lavish gift. Is what I'm trying to tell to Tactical Droid, but he wouldn't listen to me. Make people you trust moderate it, man. It doesn't need to be only you moderating it. I don't want to moderate it, Abdi Muhammad. Like, first of all, if Discord wants to moderate it, they should do it themselves. Secondly, you're putting me in a position where I have to do something against my morality. Thirdly, let's say I do moderate it. Because it's not about the fact that I can't. Like, of course I can put some people to make a bot. But the problem is, like, okay, let's say someone makes a South Park joke, right? Now I have a choice. Is that hate speech or not? Well, if I remove it, people will complain and will be like, oh my god, V, you're such a horrible person. Look, you removed the joke when it's obviously a joke. Why are you like this? Secondly, I can leave it up there and then Discord can nuke the server. And then everyone on my server loses their account. And then they're upset at me. It's like, oh my god, V, what happened? Look, I lost my account because I was on your server. No, fuck that shit. I'm not encouraging that. All crimes are hate crimes? I don't think all crimes are hate crimes. Like, if you do a crime, let's say you steal something. It's not a hate crime. Like, you don't hate the person you steal from. You just want his shit. It depends. What is it? Going to the mall without having a green pass in Romania. I mean, you're not hating anyone. You just go to the mall. I wouldn't be allowed if there was moderation. Yeah, I'm not moderating shit. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this. I know it wasn't as entertaining as the last one, but unfortunately, it was a drought in the news. Wasn't that much interesting thing to talk about. Hopefully, I can talk about Dune tomorrow, because maybe I'll get to watch it. Can't go to the cinema, but I heard there are other ways. And going to a friend's house who has the movie, yes. And I'll make some commentary based on it. Yeah, failing to pay income tax is not a hate crime. Is it a hate crime if you don't pay taxes, Abdi Muhammad? Rape isn't a hate crime. So feminists are trying to say that, but it can also be a crime of lust. I mean, it is a crime, definitely. But again, I don't know if you actually need to... Well, I don't know if rapists hate the person they're raping. I have no idea, okay? I've never raped a person. I don't think I ever will, thank God. I don't plan to, and I don't know what's in the mind of a rapist. I don't know why they do it.